Okay, so I guess I've played enough of the new Battlefront beta to have a good grasp on the game, or at least enough to give my initial impressions. I'll throw out the disclaimer right away that yes, the beta is a beta and therefore changes can be made in the intervening time between now and release, but come on, we're a month away. Aside from minor tweaks and bug fixes, we're not really going to get any major changes made to the mechanics of the game. So with that out of the way, let's get to the point. Battlefront, that is the new Battlefront, is okay. It's not great. Definitely not great. But it's not bad. It's incredible how DICE has managed to balance the old school and fantastic with the utter shit and questionable decisions made in the effort of spicing things up for a new generation of gamers. And it really makes it hard to talk about, because there are so many good ideas throwing around, and there are so many bad ones. So, the beta consists of two parts. You get the multiplayer, which was, of course, to be expected, but I didn't expect to find the single player mode represented in the beta, which is particularly odd considering that there isn't actually a main campaign in the game. That's been thoroughly announced as not existing. There was that weird period of time where DICE were announcing things that weren't going to be in the game more than they were announcing things that were. But thankfully we're quite over that, and now we can actually see what is finally in the game. So you're given one level of the game's survival mode. There's not much to it. You defend a spot on the map against 6 waves of enemies too sparse and unintelligent to give you much of a challenge. The map is massive, and the enemies just don't come in nearly thick enough to actually make it even somewhat of a chore to you. And to be fair, the game does only give you it at normal difficulty, but I can't imagine why they wouldn't at least fill the little canyons out with more enemies, just make them less bullet spongy and make just more of them. You're given ACSTs that are meant to be these big scary vehicles to take down, but they're just too slow to chase you, and they keep getting stuck on all the rocks all the time, so there's no point of going up to them and shooting them in the face. You just stay far away and you shoot them around corners and you lead them off until the pathfinding breaks again. It's sad, it's half-hearted, and it probably doesn't have nearly as much work put into it as the multiplayer. And really there's not much more to say about it. I doubt I'll end up playing it much unless there's any drastic changes to the formula in the main game. And then there's the multiplayer. So we have 2 maps and 2 game modes available. Hoth, which we've all seen in the previews and trailers, and another rocky, murky planet called Salust, in which 2 teams fight for control over the drop pods that come in sequence around the map, and it's kind of a... oh, I don't know, it's kind of like a King of the Hill team-based sort of game type. You control the little points on the map, and then you move on to the next point, and it's all randomly generated. I think it's randomly generated where the drop pods drop in. I don't know whether it's... I don't know whether there's a particular set out number of locations and where they go for. I didn't really play it enough to really get a handle on exactly where everything spawns and exactly what order they go in. But it's not really that great. The map design is pretty shoddy and the atmosphere is pretty dull and brown. It can get a bit confusing to run around all these little samey rocks, and there's not really any... there's no real landmarks on the map. There's nothing to really draw your eye. It's just mud with a few poison pools, and I don't know. It's not something that I've really found anywhere near as impressive as Hoth, which, come on, it is Hoth. But I was kind of expecting something a little bit more than a reskin of Tatooine. So then we get Hoth, the highlight of the beta. And then this is where things actually get really good. You get the AT-ATs, they're on a nigh unstoppable trudge to the shield generator, and it's great. The map is large and varied, and it's well suited to the player count. It keeps the battle flowing with the rebels on the slow retreat, and I will admit that the Empire will roll right over the base 9 times out of 10, but I suppose it's accurate to the films at least. I suppose balance tweaks are one of the easier things to fix later on, and God, I hope so, at least, because if you're a Rebel player, it can be fun, it is really fun, but it would be nice to actually win once or twice. I've played a couple of dozen matches on Hoth so far, and I have never seen the Rebels win, so it is incredibly difficult to it is incredibly difficult to succeed on that map if you start off on the wrong team. It's a showcase map, so of course it's going to be great. But I hope, judging from this compared to Celeste, I hope they haven't really poured all of their resources into a couple of little showcase maps. I hope they can keep the quality consistent across the rest of the maps. And judging from the overall presentation, I think they're going to be able to keep the overall Star Wars feeling going at least. The graphics are awesome, the sounds are wonderful, the effects and explosions and lasers and sabers and all of it is great. It's just great. In particular, I think they've done a fantastic job with the lighting and the sound design, which captures the feel of Star Wars better than just about any other game I've played. They've also done a good job with the UI and the menu design, which is especially impressive given I'm not usually one for the big blocky buttons look. It's all great. But it comes alongside all these weird little changes, and major changes, made to the gameplay. And again, I need to put in this little disclaimer that yes, it can't be an exact clone of the original 2 games from a decade ago, but can't it just be a little bit closer? Why isn't there a class system? The new game gives you these systems of cards and customizable loadouts that really discourages you from attempting any kind of specialist role. You choose 3 cards, and why do they use cards? Do they play cards at any point in Star Wars? I don't think I've seen any points in Star Wars where they play cards. So you choose these 3 cards, and one of 4 blasters per loadout. Each card represents an ability you can use on a cooldown. Except DICE have taken this bizarre route of including such essential abilities as grenades and a single shot from your sniper rifle. Yeah, you can't actually equip a sniper rifle to your character. You have to have it as one of these little weird cooldown abilities. You get a single shot and then you don't even get to reload it. It just goes away, it just flashes away, and then you get your blaster rifle back. You can't just switch to a specialist weapon like you could in the old games. You couldn't just get your sniper, you couldn't get your rifle out and reload it like a normal person in a normal game. Instead you have to play your card, and it baffles me. It really does. Because the class system just felt so much simpler, and it is so sorely missed. And that may just be nostalgia talking, it may be, but I feel like locking away these weapons is just... it just doesn't sit right for me. It doesn't really feel like it doesn't feel like you're playing a valuable part of the team. It just feels like you're throwing yourself into the grinder and trying, just hoping to get... and just hoping that your abilities come through in a time of need. You can't really plan for the situation, you kind of just have to wing it, essentially. And really this is sort of the first part of my little trifecta of terrible changes that, in my opinion, have lessened the game in comparison. The other 2 are regenerating health and the spawn on buddy systems. Both pretty normalised across modern gaming, and especially in the Battlefield franchise, but this isn't Battlefield. Regenerating health, coupled with a somewhat generous health pool to begin with, it just drags the one-on-one skirmishes out to the point that unless you're completely taken by surprise, you'll usually end up popping in and out of cover while your enemy does the same until a teammate comes along. I suppose it's meant to lessen the domination of snipers and long-range weaponry on these wide-open maps, but with the sniper rifle being relegated to just an ability, it makes the mid to long-range combat an absolute chore. The other major change I disagree with is the fact that you can now spawn easily on an ally with no penalty whatsoever. And again, I get the reasoning. It gets you into the battle quicker and it gives you a sense of momentum to things. It keeps your team flowing as one big push against the enemy. But again, with the regenerating health and the lack of classes, it will usually mean that if you're stuck in a rut, you can just wait it out until your buddy spawns in on you. I've had moments where I'm in a one-on-one with enemies that turns into a 4-on-4, and it's odd. These little system tweaks and changes, they don't really have so much of an impact on their own, but when they're combined, it just feels like it just bogs down the game. And it's not really something that you really want to mess around with. It feels like, again, they've tried to refine the formula a bit too much. They've taken away the classes and they've replaced it with just this this utter shit that just doesn't mesh well with the rest of the game. Other changes are less major and, to be honest, don't really bother me nearly as much. Power-ups and special items, including vehicles and hero characters, are dotted around the maps as tokens, and they let you spawn in, say, an ATST or an Auto Turret or a Luke Skywalker. I don't mind the change because it keeps the battle moving at least, and it gives you a little mini objectives across the map to make your way towards, and enemies can try and camp around these little tokens and make sure that you don't get your X-Wings out. And so it gives you a little bit more of a mini tactical element to the game. It would be nice to let the teams be tactical in their preemptive destruction of vehicles actually on the map, but it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It again makes everyone get a bit too bogged down at the spawn points, and everyone's rushing for the same vehicles, and it's just a bit of a mess. You've got flying vehicles now, you've got flying... all the flying vehicles are on the map, and they're actually fighting alongside the elements on the ground. To be honest, on the Hoth map, I didn't really notice them too much. You don't really get too many TIE fighters or X-Wings gunning at it together. I think there's 2 or 3 per team, which doesn't really add up to too much. It doesn't really feel like there's a huge space battle going on over your head, well, sky battle going on over your head. It just kind of feels like people are pissing about a bit, which is okay. I wouldn't really like to have to be constantly being bombarded by TIE fighters. I did actually have a lot of experience in the vehicles, and they are really fun to play. They control really well, and the ability to just fire on the enemy and then move up and getting into a major dogfight, it feels nice. It feels like something that was made as a great addition to the game, and something that, in the absence of space battles, which I do sorely miss, it feels like a good compromise to have. I just kind of wish there were more vehicles in general. We may get more of them as the game comes out, but for the Hoth map at least, it kind of feels a bit sparse. The heroes are back, they leap around like frogs, but they keep the dread factor they've always enjoyed, and the blaster parrying is just a sight to behold. All said, I'll probably be getting the game on release. It has some major issues, and while I'd strongly recommend either of the first 2 over it, it's still looking to be a great Star Wars game. My main concern at the moment is its staying power, because I can fire at Battlefront 2 and still have a blast. But I don't really know if this one has that kind of appeal. I don't know if I'll be doing this all over again in 18 months or 2 years when Battlefront 4 comes out, and I really hope I'm not going to get into that situation. So, we'll have to see. I really hope that the maps come out and are just as good as Hoth is at the moment. I really hope that they can tweak things a bit more so the teams are a bit more balanced. I hope they include more vehicles. I seriously have doubts that they'll do anything to the card system, or maybe they'll tweak the regenerating health, I think, maybe. And the spawn system. Oh, one last thing, you can't select which part of the map that you want to spawn on. You have to select either a random spawn on the map, semi-random spawn on the map, or spawning on your ally. The spawning in this game really ticks me off. It doesn't feel anywhere close to... It doesn't feel anywhere close to enjoyable. I don't really feel like I have much control over it. And in the cases where I'm spawning on an ally, I feel like you should really dial it down a bit more. You should just set a limit on it so you don't really get a whole team spawning on one guy. But anyway, that's Battlefront. We'll see how it turns out. Again, it is a month away. We're not going to get any major changes. I seriously doubt it. They've had some sort of survey going around in the game. I've filled it in. It's not really that great. They're not really going to take that to heart. They can't. They literally just don't have the time to. So maybe that survey is going to come into effect for DLC, or I really hope not, but Battlefront 4, which could be great, judging from the feedback, but I really would like them to actually concentrate on the current Battlefront. But we'll see. Anyway, those are my thoughts. See you next time.